Ivy Danjuma loved rooms that belonged to her. Rooms where people stood up when she entered. Rooms where laughter followed her like perfume. So when she planned her birthday party on Victoria Island, white roses, gold lights, a red carpet, and a guest list full of important names, she was sure of one thing: nothing would steal her spotlight. Then her friend Rita leaned in and whispered, "Your driver is outside." Ivy's smile sharpened. Perfect. This was the part she'd been waiting for. She turned toward the entrance, already imagining him confused, already imagining herself saving him in front of everyone, and enjoying every second of it. Ivy didn't know the joke was already over. The doors opened, and Ivy's entire smile disappeared, because the man who stepped inside didn't look like anybody's driver. He looked like the kind of man the room should stand up for. The morning sun hit the black SUV in sharp angles as Suleiman Adeyemi worked the cloth across the hood in steady, deliberate strokes. His movements were precise, economical. The kind of discipline that doesn't come from a job, it comes from somewhere deeper. He wore a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled exactly twice, and black trousers without a wrinkle. His shoes were old but polished to a mirror shine. Everything about him was quiet, controlled, the kind of man people looked past because he never demanded to be seen. The compound was silent except for the distant hum of Lagos traffic and the occasional call of a bird in the mango tree overhead. Sula worked without music, without distraction. Just him and the task, done right. A security guard passing by nodded at him. "Morning, Sule." "Morning, Emeka." That was the extent of it. No small talk. No complaints about the heat or the early hour. Sule wasn't unfriendly. He was just contained, like a book with all its pages turned inward. Inside the house, Ivy Danjuma's voice cut through the morning like broken glass. "Rita, I swear, if they seat me next to anyone who flew economy, I'm leaving." Laughter erupted from the parlor. Ivy stood in front of a full-length mirror, holding up two dresses while her friends Rita and Kemi sprawled on the cream leather sofa, scrolling through their phones. Rita, sharp-faced and always ready with the cruelest joke, didn't even look up. "Babe, your birthday is going to break Instagram. I already told the photographer to make sure he catches every angle." Kemi nodded eagerly, her voice breathless with excitement. "Everyone's talking about it. The venue alone is giving people headaches. I heard someone paid triple just to get on the guest list." Ivy smiled, satisfied. She lived for this. The attention, the envy, the proof that she had arrived and everyone else was still climbing. She tossed one dress aside and held the gold sequined gown against her body, turning left and right. "This one, it says, I own the room." "Period," Rita said, snapping her fingers. "Honestly, the other one is cute, but this is power." Ivy examined herself in the mirror, tilting her chin up the way she'd practiced. She'd spent years building this image. The right friends, the right parties, the right posts. Every detail curated to prove she was untouchable. Outside, Sule finished the car and stood back, checking his work. The SUV gleamed like a showroom model. He didn't hear Ivy approach until she was already there, phone pressed to her ear, heels clicking on the driveway. She glanced at the SUV, then at him, the way someone might glance at a chair to make sure it's still in place. "Sule," she said, not as a greeting, but as a summons. He straightened. "Yes, Ma." "I need you to pick up the cake at 3. Don't be late. And for God's sake, don't touch anything with dirty hands." She wrinkled her nose. "The baker is very particular." "Yes, Ma." She turned to leave, then paused, as if remembering something. A slow smile crept across her face, the kind that didn't reach her eyes but showed all her teeth. "Actually, Sule, I'm having my birthday party this Saturday, Victoria Island. Very exclusive." She tilted her head, watching him like a cat watches a mouse. You should come. The words hung in the air. Sul's face didn't change. Thank you, Ma. Ivy blinked. She had expected confusion. Maybe panic. Definitely some stammering about not having the right clothes or not belonging in such a place. She'd rehearsed this moment with Rita and Kimmy, imagining his discomfort, his fumbling gratitude. Instead, he just stood there, calm, steady, his eyes meeting hers without dropping. It unsettled her. Rita appeared in the doorway, catching the tail end of the conversation. Her eyes lit up with wicked amusement. Wait, you're inviting your driver? Ivy recovered quickly, laughing too loud. Why not? Everyone should see how generous I am, how I don't discriminate. Kemi joined them, grinning. This is going to be epic. Imagine him trying to hold a wine glass, or figure out which fork to use. Rita clutched her stomach, laughing. Girl, I'm bringing extra phone battery just to record it. They dissolved into laughter, already imagining the spectacle, the entertainment value, the story they'd tell for months. Sul said nothing. He nodded once, then returned to his work, bending to check the tire pressure with the same quiet focus as before. But as Ivy walked back into the house, something nagged at her. His reaction, the way he hadn't flinched, the way his shoulders hadn't hunched with that familiar shame she expected. He's too calm, she muttered. Rita waved her off, collapsing back onto the sofa. He's probably just grateful. Trust me, when he shows up in whatever cheap suit he digs up from Yaba Market, everyone will know exactly who he is. Ivy forced a smile. You're right. But the doubt lingered like smoke she couldn't wave away. What would you do if you were in Sul's position? Would you go to the party or quit on the spot? Drop your answer below. That evening, Sul climbed the narrow staircase to his one-room apartment in Yaba. The building was old but clean, the kind of place where neighbors greeted each other and shared salt when someone ran out. His space was on the third floor, tucked in the corner. He unlocked the door and stepped into the small room. It was minimal, organized, everything in its place. A single bed with a faded blue coverlet, a wooden table with one chair, a hot plate on a shelf, a stack of books beside the bed, history, architecture, a worn copy of Achebe's Things Fall Apart. No television, no decorations, just the essentials. He locked the door behind him and moved to the small wardrobe in the corner. From the top shelf, he pulled down a black box, worn at the edges, the kind of box that holds things too important to throw away but too painful to look at often. He set it on the bed and opened it slowly, like opening a door to another life. Inside, a folded newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. A certificate with his name printed in bold letters. A small medal on a faded ribbon. And beneath it all, a garment bag, dusty but intact. Sule unzipped the bag carefully. The suit inside was midnight blue, hand-stitched, the kind of craftsmanship that didn't come from a mall rack. The fabric had weight to it, quality that announced itself quietly. He ran his fingers along the lapel, remembering the hands that made it, the life that came before this one. He sat on the edge of the bed, holding the certificate. His face, usually so controlled, softened just slightly. The certificate was from the Nigerian Institute of Architects. Honors, top of his class. That was before everything changed, before his mother's illness, before the debts, before he had to choose between finishing his degree and keeping her alive. He'd chosen her. And when she died anyway, he'd been left with nothing but memories and a box full of what could have been. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message was short. I saw you in someone's Instagram story. Background. Standing by a car. Is it really you? Are you still in Lagos? Sul stared at the screen for a long moment. The number wasn't saved, but he recognized the area code. Someone from his old life. Someone who remembered. He didn't reply. Instead, he set the phone down, looked at the suit again, and made a decision. Tomorrow, he would visit Baba Tunde. The next morning, Sule walked into a small tailor shop tucked between a barber shop and a provision store in Surulere. The sign above the door read, Baba Tunde, Master Tailor since 1987. Inside, the shop smelled of fabric and old wood. An old man sat hunched over a sewing machine, glasses perched on his nose, hands moving with the precision of decades. Bolts of fabric lined the walls. A mannequin stood in the corner, wearing half-finished agbada. Sule cleared his throat softly. "Good morning, sir." Baba Tunde looked up. His eyes narrowed, then widened. Sule?" "Yes, sir." The old man stood slowly, his joints creaking, studying Sule like he was reading a book he'd once loved and thought he'd lost. "It's been a long time." "Too long." "Yes, sir." Baba Tunde gestured to the garment bag in Sule's hands. "Let me see." Sule handed it over carefully, like passing over something sacred. The tailor unzipped it and pulled the suit out, holding it up to the light streaming through the window. He clicked his tongue, impressed despite himself. "Still perfect," Baba Tunde murmured, running the fabric between his fingers. "But it needs adjustment. You've changed, filled out in the shoulders, lost weight everywhere else." "Yes, sir." Baba Tunde didn't ask why Sule needed the suit, didn't ask where he'd been or why he'd disappeared from the circles they used to travel in. He just took measurements in silence, pins between his lips, chalk in hand, marking adjustments with the confidence of a man who dressed governors and businessmen. As Sule turned slowly under the tailor's guidance, standing straight with his arms out, Baba Tunde finally spoke. "You know, when you left, people talked. They said you disappeared. Some said you gave up, that you couldn't handle the pressure." Sule said nothing. Baba Tunde pinned the sleeve, adjusting the length. "But I always knew. A man like you doesn't give up. He just waits for the right moment." Sule met his eyes in the mirror. The tailor nodded, understanding passing between them without words. "Come back Friday. It will be ready." "And Sule?" "Sir, when you walk into wherever you're going, make sure they remember." By Thursday, Ivy's excitement had reached a fever pitch. She posted daily countdowns on Instagram. Her phone buzzed nonstop with RSVPs, congratulations, and envy disguised as compliments. "Can't wait. You deserve everything, Queen. I'm bringing my best outfit just to keep up with you." Rita and Kemi were at the house again, this time coordinating final details while a catering team bustled through the kitchen. "Did you confirm the photographer?" Ivy asked, pacing the parlor in her silk robe, hair in rollers. "Done," Rita said, not looking up from her phone. "JC's the best. He'll make sure every post goes viral. He's bringing 2 assistants and a drone." Kemi looked up from her phone, eyes wide. "Babe, people are already talking about your guest list. Someone asked if it's true you invited your driver." Ivy laughed, high and sharp. "Let them talk. When he walks in looking lost, it'll be the perfect reminder of who I am. Generous, down to earth. Not like these other fake people who forget where they came from." Rita raised her glass of champagne. "To Ivy, the queen who's generous enough to invite the help." They clinked glasses, the sound bright and hollow. But later that night, when the house was quiet and her friends had gone home, Ivy lay awake staring at the ceiling. The silk sheets felt too smooth, the air conditioning too cold. She thought about Sule's face when she invited him, the way he hadn't looked surprised, hadn't looked grateful, hadn't fumbled for words, just steady, like he'd been expecting it, or like it didn't matter. It bothered her more than she wanted to admit. She grabbed her phone, scrolling through old posts, looking for something to distract her. But every image, every carefully posed photo, every curated caption, suddenly felt like work. like armor she had to keep polishing. She turned off the phone and closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come easy. Friday afternoon, Sule returned to Babatunde's shop. The suit hung on a rack by the window, tailored to perfection, catching the late afternoon light. When Sule put it on, the old man stepped back and smiled, his wrinkled face creasing with satisfaction. "Now you look like yourself again." Sule adjusted the cuffs, feeling the fabric settle against his skin like memory. The suit fit like it remembered him, like it had been waiting. Babatunde handed him a small box. "Your shoes. I had them polished by the best man I know. He made them shine like glass." Sule opened the box. The black leather shoes inside gleamed, catching light like water. "Thank you, sir. How much do I owe you?" Babatunde waved him off. "You owe me nothing. Just promise me one thing." "Sir, when they ask who made your suit, you tell them Babatunde. Let them remember that quality doesn't shout." Sule smiled, a rare, genuine expression. "I promise." As Sule turned to leave, Babatunde called after him. "Sule," he paused at the door. "Whatever you're walking into, remember who you are. Not who they think you are. Not who they tried to make you. Who you actually are." Sule nodded once, the words settling in his chest like stones in still water. Then he stepped out into the Lagos heat, the garment bag over his shoulder, the box of shoes under his arm. Behind him, Babatunde watched through the window, saying a small prayer for the young man he'd known since he was a boy, with big dreams and his mother's determination. Saturday evening arrived like a storm building on the horizon. The venue was a private event hall in Victoria Island, all white marble and gold accents, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lagoon. The water stretched out dark and endless, city lights beginning to flicker on across the shoreline. Ivy had spared no expense. The entrance was lined with white roses imported from South Africa. A red carpet stretched from the door to the main hall, photographers positioned at intervals. Waiters in crisp white uniforms moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and canapes, smoked salmon, caviar, tiny pastries that cost more than most people's weekly salary. A live band played soft jazz in the corner. The air smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. Ivy stood at the center of it all, draped in gold, soaking in the attention like sunlight. Her dress caught every light, every camera flash, turning her into a living trophy. "Happy birthday, darling," someone cooed, air-kissing her cheeks without making contact. "You look stunning," another guest gushed, already composing the Instagram caption in her head. Ivy beamed. This was her night, her kingdom. Proof that she'd made it, that all the climbing and cutting and careful positioning had paid off. Rita and Kimi flanked her like sentries, whispering commentary on every arrival. "That's Chief Obiora," Kemi whispered, nodding toward a tall man with silver hair and a commanding presence. "He owns half of Lekki, 3 hotels, 2 shopping plazas, and that new residential development everyone's talking about." "And that's Dr. Afolabi," Rita added, gesturing subtly toward a woman in her 60s wearing traditional attire that probably cost more than a car. "She funded the new plaza downtown. Her family is old money, like colonial-era old." Ivy preened, mentally cataloging each important guest, already imagining the photos, the tags, the proof of her arrival. Then someone leaned in, a woman in a silver dress dripping with curiosity, and asked, "Is it true you invited your driver?" Ivy's smile sharpened, predatory. "Of course. I believe in being kind to everyone. It doesn't matter where someone comes from. I treat everyone with respect." The guest's eyes gleamed with barely concealed delight. "How generous. How very progressive of you." But the subtext was clear. How humiliating for him. How entertaining for us. Ivy excused herself and pulled Rita aside, her smile faltering for just a moment. "Has anyone seen him yet?" No, Rita said, scanning the room with predatory efficiency. Maybe he chickened out. Maybe he realized he doesn't belong. Ivy felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Relief because his absence meant no awkward moment. Disappointment because she'd been looking forward to the spectacle, to watching him fumble, to reminding everyone present of the distance between them. Then JC, the photographer, appeared with his camera, his assistant trailing behind. Ivy, we need a group shot by the entrance. The lighting's perfect right now. Golden hour is ending soon. Ivy gathered her friends, posed with practiced precision, smiled until her cheeks hurt. Flash after flash after flash. And then, across the room, the double doors opened. The sound died first. Then the movement. Then time itself seemed to pause. Sewell stepped into the room and the air itself seemed to shift, like the atmosphere before lightning strikes. He wasn't rushing, wasn't performing, wasn't trying to prove anything. He simply walked forward, shoulders back, head high, the midnight blue suit catching the chandelier light like it was made for this exact moment. The fabric moved with him, fluid and perfect. His shoes gleamed. His posture spoke of quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't announce itself because it doesn't need to. People turned. Phones rose instinctively, fingers finding camera apps before their brains caught up with their eyes. Whispers started like wind through tall grass, soft at first, then building. Who is that? Wait, I know him from somewhere. Is that the driver? That can't be the driver. Look at that suit. Look at the way he walks. Ivy's heart dropped into her stomach like a stone into dark water. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to look out of place. Uncomfortable, wrong, like a mistake someone made by accident. But Sewell looked like he belonged in this room more than anyone else. Like the room had been waiting for him. Rita grabbed Ivy's arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging in. That's him? That's your driver? Ivy couldn't speak. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her carefully constructed world was tilting, and she couldn't find her balance. Kemi stared, open-mouthed. Girl, what? Chief Obiora, the tall man with silver hair and the commanding presence of someone used to being the most important person in any room, stood near the bar. His eyes locked onto Sule. His expression shifted from mild curiosity to recognition to something like genuine respect. He set down his drink and walked forward, cutting through the crowd like a ship through water. People parted without thinking about it. Sewell, the room went even quieter, if that was possible. You could have heard a pin drop on carpet. Sewell stopped, turned, and nodded. Good evening, sir. Chief Obiora stared at him for a long moment, his face cycling through emotions. Surprise, pleasure, something almost paternal. Then he extended his hand. It's been a long time. Too long. They shook hands, firmly, like equals, like men who understood something the rest of the room didn't. Too long, Sewell agreed quietly. The chief smiled, and it was genuine, warm. I didn't know you were back in Lagos. Last I heard, you'd... He trailed off diplomatically. I've been here, Sewell said simply. Working. Working, the chief repeated, the word hanging in the air with weight. Ivy felt the ground tilting under her feet. The room was spinning, but she was standing still. JC, the photographer, snapped a photo. Then another. Then another. His eyes were wide with the thrill of unexpected content. The kind of moment that made careers. He posted immediately, fingers flying across his phone. Who is this guy? Bonnie and Ivy's birthday. Mystery. Lagos. 6. Within seconds, comments started rolling in like a flood breaking a dam. OMG, is that the runway model from 2019? Wait, I've seen him before. He looks like money. That suit alone is at least $500K. The way he carries himself, though. Ivy tried to laugh it off, her voice loud and brittle. cracking at the edges. "Everyone, this is Sewell, my driver. Isn't it sweet that he came?" "I told you I believe in including everyone." But her voice sounded desperate even to her own ears, defensive, like she was losing an argument she hadn't realized she was having, because no one was looking at her anymore. All eyes were on Sule. Pause here. What do you think the crowd saw when Sule walked in? Was it just the suit or something deeper? Tell me what you think below. Dr. Afolabi, the woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, approached next. She moved with the deliberate grace of someone who'd spent decades commanding respect in rooms full of men. She studied Sewell carefully, her gaze traveling from his face to his stance to the way he held himself. "You're Amaka's son." The room froze again, completely, like someone had pressed pause on reality. Sewell's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he nodded. "Yes, Ma." Dr. Afolabi's expression softened in a way that made several people nearby lean in, sensing a story. "I worked with your mother. She was brilliant, one of the best architects I've ever known, and I've known many." Ivy's blood ran cold. Her champagne glass trembled in her hand. "Architect?" Kemi whispered urgently. "Did she just say architect?" Rita's face had gone pale, her phone forgotten in her hand. Dr. Afolabi continued, her voice carrying across the room with the weight of authority and truth. "She designed the landmark tower in Ikoyi and the Seabreeze complex that won the international award. Her work is all over this city. Every time I pass one of her buildings, I think of her. Such a loss." Sewell nodded once, his face betraying no emotion, but his eyes, those steady, quiet eyes, held something deep and painful and fiercely protected. "Thank you, Ma," he said, softly. Ivy's mind raced, memories flooding back like water through a broken dam. She'd built her career on interior design, leveraging contacts, taking credit for collaborations, positioning herself as the creative genius behind several projects. And one of those collaborations, years ago, had been with a quiet woman named Amaka. A woman who did the real work while Ivy took the meetings, made the connections, signed the contracts. A woman Ivy had dismissed, undermined, and eventually pushed out of a major project when she no longer needed her. A woman who had died 2 years later, her name forgotten by everyone except the people who really mattered. Ivy felt sick. Actually, physically sick. Another guest, a man in a crisp agbada with gold threading, stepped forward, his expression curious and impressed. "Wait, you're the one who helped broker the marina development deal, aren't you? The waterfront project?" Suli hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Then he nodded. "I was part of the team." "Part of the team?" The man laughed, shaking his head. "Brother, don't be modest. You were the reason it went through. Your family's trust fund backed the whole thing. Without you, that development would still be a dream in someone's filing cabinet." The whispers turned into a low roar, voices overlapping, phones rising higher. Trust fund? His family? Wait, who is he really? I knew I recognized him. Ivy's world was collapsing in real time, each revelation a hammer blow to the image she'd spent years constructing. Rita tried to salvage it, stepping forward with a forced laugh. "Ivy, maybe we should—" "Shut up," Ivy hissed through clenched teeth, her smile still frozen on her face for the cameras. She pushed through the crowd, heels clicking sharply on the marble floor, the sound echoing in the sudden quiet. People parted for her, but not the way they used to. Not with deference, with curiosity, with the anticipation of watching something break. She stopped in front of Suli, close enough that only he could see the desperation in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, her voice shaking despite her effort to control it. Sule looked at her, really looked at her, like he was seeing her for the first time. and his expression was something she'd never seen before. Calm, understanding, pitying. "You never asked," he said, quietly, his voice steady as stone. "You only judged." The words hit her like a slap, sharp and stinging and true. Someone nearby stifled a laugh, then another person. Then whispers erupted like fireworks. Ivy's face flushed red, heat crawling up her neck. "I gave you a job. I paid you good money. I treated you with respect." "Did you?" Sule asked, and the question hung there, simple and devastating. Ivy opened her mouth, but no words came. Sule took a step closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "My mother used to say that how you treat people when you think they're beneath you shows who you really are. Not your money, not your connections, how you treat the person who can't do anything for you." Ivy's eyes filled with tears, but not the kind that earned sympathy. The kind that came from shame, hot and bitter. Her voice cracked. "I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," Sule corrected gently. "There's a difference." Chief Obiora appeared beside Sule, placing a hand on his shoulder with familiar warmth. "Sule, we have a table reserved. You should join us. We have much to discuss. The Seabreeze Legacy Fund is doing remarkable work." Sule nodded, allowing himself to be led away. Ivy watched, helpless, as Sule was guided to the VIP section, the same section she'd fought to be part of. The same section where she'd positioned herself for photos all evening. And now he sat there, surrounded by the people who actually mattered, while she stood in the middle of her own party, feeling like a stranger. Rita and Kemi stood frozen several feet away, unsure whether to follow or flee or pretend they'd never laughed about him. Then Ivy's phone buzzed insistently in her clutch. She pulled it out with trembling hands. It was a message from Damilola, her so-called sponsor and fiancé, the man who'd been financing her lifestyle in exchange for being seen with her at events. "Just saw the video. You humiliated someone you thought was nothing, and he turned out to be everything. This is bad for my image. People are asking why I'm with someone so cruel. We're done. Don't contact me." Ivy stared at the screen, her vision blurring, her hands shaking so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Behind her, she heard laughter. Whispers. The sound of her carefully constructed world crumbling. "Did you see her face? I heard she used to bully him, called him stupid, treated him like furniture. Karma is real, Shah. God doesn't sleep." The party continued around her, but she was no longer at the center of it. She was just another guest at an event that had stopped being about her the moment Sule walked through the door. Sule sat at the VIP table, surrounded by people who spoke to him with respect, who asked about his mother's legacy, who wanted to know his plans, who remembered him from before when he'd been on a different path. Chief Obiora was telling a story about working with Amaka on the Landmark Tower. Dr. Afolabi was asking about the trust fund's latest projects. A younger man in tech was pitching a collaboration. Sule answered quietly, politely, but his mind was elsewhere. He glanced across the room and saw Ivy standing alone near the entrance, her gold dress suddenly looking too bright, too desperate, like armor that didn't fit anymore. Her friends had drifted away. Guests who'd been fawning over her earlier were now keeping their distance, phones out, probably texting other people about what they'd just witnessed. For a moment, he felt something close to pity. She'd built her whole identity on a foundation of other people's pain, and now that foundation was cracking. But only for a moment, because pity doesn't undo cruelty, and sympathy doesn't erase the small humiliations, the casual dismissals, the way she'd made him feel invisible for months. Dr. Afolabi leaned closer, her voice gentle. "Your mother would be so proud of you, the way you carried yourself tonight, the dignity." Sule nodded, throat tight. "I hope so, Ma." "I know so," she said firmly. "Amaka raised you well. That doesn't disappear, no matter what life takes from you. Monday morning arrived gray and heavy, like the sky was holding its breath. Sewell returned to Ivy's house one last time. The gate guard recognized him, but there was something different in his greeting. Respect instead of dismissal. "Morning, sir?" "Morning, Emika." He walked up the driveway, past the SUV he'd cleaned so many times, past the mango tree where he'd stood in the shade waiting for orders. Ivy was in the parlor, still in her robe, hair unwashed, scrolling through her phone with red-rimmed eyes. The posts were everywhere. The photos, the videos, the comments. The driver was the real MVP. Ivy thought she was flexing but got humbled. This is what happens when you treat people like trash. Respect people, you never know. He walked in and destroyed her entire life without saying a word. She looked up when Sule entered, and for a moment, she looked small, fragile. Nothing like the woman who'd lorded over him for months. "I'm resigning," he said simply. No preamble, no explanation. Ivy's mouth opened, then closed. She wanted to beg, to apologize, to explain that she hadn't known, that she was sorry, that she'd learned her lesson. But what was there to say? What words could possibly bridge the distance between who she'd been and who she needed to become? Sewell placed the car keys on the glass coffee table. They landed with a soft click. "Thank you for the opportunity, Ma." He turned to leave. "Sule?" He paused, hand on the doorframe. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and her voice was broken, genuine. "I'm so sorry." He looked back, and for the first time since he'd started working for her, his expression softened. Just slightly. Just enough. "I hope you learn from this," he said, quietly. "Not everyone you step on stays down. And the ladder you're climbing, the people below you are the ones holding it up. Remember that." And then he walked out, into the morning light, leaving Ivy alone with her phone and her shame and the ruins of her carefully constructed image. 3 months later, Sewell stood on a rooftop overlooking the Lagos skyline. The city stretched out before him, chaotic and beautiful, a million stories happening at once. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. His mother's architectural firm, which he'd revived with the trust fund and several strategic partnerships, had just completed its first major project, a mixed-use development in Lekki that provided affordable housing alongside commercial space. A billboard across the street displayed his face alongside the words, "Seabreeze Legacy Fund, Building Tomorrow, Honoring Yesterday." Below it, his mother's name, "In memory of Amaka Nwosu, architect, visionary, mother." His phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Afolabi. "Your mother would be proud. I know I am. Dinner next week?" He smiled. Small, but real. Another message, this one from Baba Tunde. "I saw the billboard. Told you to make them remember. Well done, my boy." Across town, in a much smaller apartment than the one she used to live in, Ivy sat on a second-hand sofa, scrolling through Instagram. The algorithm was cruel, relentless. Every third post seemed to feature Sewell. At events, in magazines, shaking hands with government officials, cutting ribbons at building inaugurations, giving interviews about sustainable architecture and honoring his mother's legacy. She'd lost her sponsor, lost several clients. Her friends had quietly distanced themselves, Rita and Kemi now posting photos with other people at other parties as if Ivy had never existed. She set the phone down and stared at the wall, at the space where her expensive art used to hang before she'd had to sell it. The people you step on today might be the ones holding tomorrow. She'd learned that lesson the hardest way possible, with an audience, with cameras, with the internet watching and recording and never forgetting. But maybe, she thought, Picking up a notebook she'd bought last week, maybe that was the point. Maybe some lessons are supposed to hurt. Maybe that's the only way they stick. She opened the notebook to the first page and wrote, Day 1, what I learned. It wasn't much. It wasn't redemption, but it was a start. So here's the question. Should Sewell have forgiven Ivy, or was walking away the right move? Drop your thoughts below. And tell me, where are you watching from? Comment your city, hit subscribe, and let me know what story you want next. Rich versus poor, wedding betrayal, or revenge karma. Let's keep this going. Because respect isn't about what someone can do for you. It's about seeing their humanity even when you think they have nothing to offer. And if you forget that, life has a way of reminding you. Sometimes quietly, in the privacy of your own regret. Sometimes in front of a room full of people with their phones out, recording everything, posting everything, making sure the moment lives forever in the memory of the internet. The choice is yours, which lesson you get. But make no mistake, the lesson comes either way. Sewell learned that respect is earned through character, not demanded through position. Ivy learned that the throne you build on other people's humiliation is always temporary. And somewhere in Lagos, in a small tailor shop in Surulere, Babatunde smiled as he sewed another suit, knowing that good fabric and good character have one thing in common. They both last.